Hey everybody, we got a fun creative video here for you today.
With recent additions to the F1 calendar, such as Jeddah and Miami, there's been a lot of conversation around these new wave track designs.
However, in this video, we are not going to be designing our perfect track.
Instead, we're going to be using F1 related logos to see how those would translate into a real circuit.
For this video, Cass has submitted a variety of different F1 related logos, and I've gone through and hand selected the ones I've turned into a F1 circuit. And at the end of this video, you're going to be just ranking which one was your favorite and your least favorite. Like, subscribe, and without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So getting into the first track, I'm also curious, Cass, if you're going to be able to identify what was the original image of each of these circuits.
I can already tell that's the Alpine Stars logo. In a real-life adaptation, I'm assuming that the corners would be rounded, otherwise this is going to be one of the slowest tracks on the calendar. I'd be curious to see it, but I'm not overly excited by it.
On to the next one.
Ooh, see, this looks like a real track.
This one's based off Mick Schumacher's logo. I get sort of a vibe between Austria and Spain blended together.
That long straight is just insane, honestly. Would love to see how that would play out, especially if you're coming into the pits right after a very sharp turn, exiting the pits into another straightaway. I feel like that would just be carnage and utter chaos, but this actually looks like a real F1 track.
I'd be curious to also see, just because we can't consider elevation in any of these track designs, that could play a significant factor. Imagine if this straight is all downhill. Moving on now to probably one of my more favorite track designs I made.
It is ugly. I know it's the Ferrari horse. It looks like the Ferrari horse melted. That is hideous. I mean, a lot of corners.
Definitely, this would take up a lot of room.
Where are the pits?
The pits would be right here, right where the horse is like going up with his two front legs. That was the only straight part that I could build within this logo.
This would probably be a street circuit, let's be honest. But some of the turns, like near the top of the tail, that looks like a tight little chicane there. I mean, it's ugly, but it could do the trick.
I'm curious to hear what other people have to say, because this is probably the more complex logo from all the teams that translated into a track design. So for this one, I had to cut back on a few corners because there was a lot of detail in the Puma logo.
For some reason, this is giving me French Grand Prix vibes. I think just because it's so long. It looks like it would definitely be a high-speed circuit. I don't know, I'm a little bit neutral on this one because there's just not that much turning. Aside from like maybe the little face area.
Yeah, that third sector probably would be the more interesting part of the track. But other than that, like you said, it's just long straights. I'm sure they'd be flat out.
What is this?
Our next one, I'm not going to tell you what the logo is, but I think this is actually a very interesting design.
It looks like a broken turkey. Not the track, the bird.
I'm really intrigued by your thoughts on this one. We have some really long straights once again, but we also have like maybe a middle sector that's a bit more technical with turns.
Don't think there's enough turns to make this a substantial track, especially that long swooping thing on top. I cannot for the life of me figure out what logo this is.
All right, you ready to see what this logo actually is? So that's the Orlen logo. I thought that was more of a unique design or a unique logo on some of the Alfa Romeo's tracksuits. So I thought it would translate into a better track, but just from what you said, it's a lot of long swooping turns rather than more technical terms. I tried to add that around the eye, but yeah. However, I'm pretty sure you'll know this next logo.
Oh, it's AlphaTauri. Okay, but let's be honest. This whole thing is a complete sham. That is a disgrace. Why is there a circle?
Okay, tell me what you would have designed this as then.
Okay, so I would have brought it on the inside of the A and done like a swooping thing around there and brought it back up to connect with the T. It would still be bad.
So she's clearly not digging this track. Probably your lower end track.
One of them, yes.
Next one. So the Aston Martin logo, very symmetrical track here. So if you tilted it on the side, it'd look like a bow. We got some interesting chicanes here on each side, which is kind of like Circuit of the Americas.
I think it's cool. I think if you even made a couple more modifications, it could look like the Canadian Grand Prix. I would be open to this. I think, of course, there are a few too many straights. I would like to see more chicanes or tighter corners, but I like the area too down at the bottom where it's a sweeping turn followed by a tight corner, another sweeping turn into a straight. I think that would be really good for some potential overtaking opportunities. It's getting there. I'd make some minor tweaks, but I think this one does have potential.
Next.
Oh, that's Daniel's logo. Once again, we get the Monza-esque sweeping turn down here on the bottom right. But just a lot of these logos, and I mean, this is something that can't really be changed, but they don't have enough corners and edges. So this would be a very fast track.
Once again, maybe elevation could really play a factor here and really spice up some of these tracks, especially if, let's say, it was around a hill in the center.
If it's like a Baku street circuit where it's super tight, and if you make those turns really narrow, then it could be cool. The whole left side of this track needs some work. The right side, it has some possibilities for some exciting stuff.
That was Daniel Ricciardo's logo onto another driver's logo.
Lance Stroll, what is good? I mean, it's a straightforward concept. Once again, it's just a little bit basic. I think this is more of a karting track. I've never been karting, so maybe I don't know what I'm saying.
On to the next one, which is kind of similar, I'd have to say.
Oh, Lando. This looks like Austria. It really does look like Austria. It's just twisted sideways and very compact.
One thing I can point out as well is just this first chicane off this main straight reminds me of Bahrain.
I'm just seeing a lot of similarities, so I think this could be cool.
Moving on.
Oh, that's Lewis's logo.
Yeah, and so in this one, you'll notice it's not symmetrical because I didn't want to make it just copy-paste on both sides, so I added a chicane on one side and more of a curved turn on the other. My thought process to put the pit lane right there was just because it's very similar to Suzuka, where they have the chicane right off the main straight.
There's some elements about this that I like. There's other parts, basically the whole bottom portion, that I'm not crazy about.
And here we go to the next one.
I hate this because it reminds me of the Caesars Palace Grand Prix. It's terrible.
But that sharp turn off the start.
Yeah, okay, maybe, but the rest, throw it away. Throw the whole track away like they did in Vegas.
All right, moving on.
Oh, it's Latifi. Once again, I hate that semicircle.
Doesn't it remind you of turn 8 though at Turkey?
But it's massive. This takes up half the track.
It's true.
If it was just a small corner, that'd be fine. I do wish we had some tighter chicanes instead of just really sharp corners.
So I put the pit lane going downwards on the logo to get a similar vibe to maybe Brazil or Turkey as well, so anti-clockwise.
It's nowhere near one of my favorites, but it's not the worst we've seen today.
Definitely turned out nicer than I was expecting, that's what I think.
Pierre Gasly!
Good job, you figured it out. Pierre and Charles had very similar logo designs, especially in that triangular format, so I chose Pierre as he had more space.
The top of the G reminds me a lot of the top of Austria, which is cool, so keep that in. I like that it swoops down to the bottom just to kind of go reverse and back around. There are too many straights though. The straights are too long, which is kind of a common issue across a lot of these logos. I do still like it though. There's something about it that's catching my eye.
I almost feel like if we just only used the G in the logo, it would be a lot better in terms of just cutting off this super long straight.
The G portion of this reminds me a little bit of Bahrain. Obviously, this version is a lot more simplified, not as many corners, but the overall shape and the flow of the track, I think it's pretty suitable, and I like Bahrain. It's a good circuit. Ah, it's the Red Bull logo.
Lots of turns for me to choose from in this one. I tried to simplify it as much as possible with still keeping it interesting.
I feel like it's basically you're powering up for that long straight, and then everything after that is technical. So I really enjoy this. I feel like it would be a challenge for the drivers. I wouldn't say this necessarily looks like an F1 track, but with a couple of modifications, it probably easily could.
Once again, because the logo is so symmetrical, I kind of made it a bit different on each side, one with more technical corners and one with more swooping corners. So that sums up all the tracks that we created for this video. We want to hear from you as well. Which track was your favorite? Which one would you like to see become a potential future F1 circuit? And of course, which one was your least favorite and the one you think would be the least exciting? And now, of course, it's time to hear from Cass. Which was your top favorite track and then your worst track of all of them?
So I would say my favorite one, we saw it early on, Mick Schumacher's logo, signature, whatever you want to call it, just because it looks the most like an F1 track. And I think with some slight adjustments, it does have a lot of potential. Not a fan of how long that straight is, but otherwise everything else looks pretty solid to me. As for my worst one, it has to be the AlphaTauri logo. Half the track is a circle. It's awful. There are barely any proper turns. You cannot just have cars going flat out in a circle for half the race.
People have been asking for us to drive around an oval. This is the closest thing we might get.
I hate it. Delete it. We're gonna pretend it never happened. It's atrocious.
As for me, when creating these logos, the ones that were the most fun to create was probably the Ferrari logo, just because there were so many turns and I'm just like, this would be insane, and probably a really long lap. And probably the track I'd be least excited to see if it translated into a real circuit would be for the Alpine Stars. There's just too many sharp turns here. They'd have to be either a hairpin or a swooping turn on some of them. So those are our thoughts. We want to hear yours down in the comment section. Don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button.
Make sure to follow us on social media at CCF1 channel to keep the conversation going. Were there any other F1 related logos that maybe we didn't think about? If so, send them our way at CCF1 channel on social media.
And we will catch you in the next video.
Bye!